So I don't know. It's like a dance that we're always doing in any organization, and it's hard. It's hard to do, but I don't think it's impossible to like again set these clear expectations. And for me, if I'm thinking from a logical perspective as the problem solver, if
Sure.
I'm thinking about like how do we set up these this clarity in performance management, because performance management is what are they supposed to do versus what they're actually doing. And so what I would think would be the most logical thing is you start with the performance evaluation. What are we rating people on in terms of again their effectiveness? And then how are we measuring that? Like what does that look like? So for things that are very subjective and vague, like takes initiative, how do we put some measurement on takes initiative? Like how do we quantify that and put some numbers on it? If I'm trying to measure something like customer service, I might have to put some measurements in place around like customer complaints, right? How many customer complaints did I receive? How many customer complaints were legitimate? How many were not like the person's issue? Like, you know, sometimes if you worked in customer service, you take a call and they're like, I want to talk to a manager now. Well, that might be an escalation. It wasn't anything you did wrong. It's just so I wouldn't count that against that individual. But if they're like, I called Tiffany and she answered the phone and she told me to kick rocks with no socks. Well, that's a legitimate complaint. I would need that documented for my performance, right? But we have like again, late if we're taking how do we measure punctuality? Like nobody's going to be perfect. We can't say you meet expectations if you have zero tardies, but we might say if it's within, you know, six in a year, which man, that's very generous. Six in a year, I could get that in the first day. But six tardies in a year, then that meets expectations. But if you get 7 to 10 tardies in a year, you're not meeting. But if you have zero, then you exceed. Like you're immaculate, like you're amazing. If you have zero tardies, you're not just meeting punctuality, you're exceeding. Like, how do we put measurements on that? And I have met very few organizations that are that detailed in their performance evaluations. They leave it up to their supervisors, managers, leaders, whoever's doing it to kind of interpret what it means. And that's what leads to the discrepancies where I got a 3, I got a 5, I got something in between. And whereas supervisors and managers may not talk to each other about how they're doing performance evaluations, your employees do. Your employees talk to each other.
Mhm.
And I can tell you from my own experience is that if I have the same behavior, right? If I am on team A and I have been doing this procedure process, whatever, for the last 3 years, and I have gotten and exceeds expectations for those 3 to 4 years. And now I have a new supervisor and I'm doing the same thing. And they're like, just meets. I'm be like, whoa, time out, time out. What's changed? Because I've been doing it this way and I've gotten a great rating that I'm exceeding for the last 4 years. And now you're telling me I'm just basic. What happened? Right. And now it might feel personal to me. Why don't you like me? What did I do to you? Or like what you mentioned earlier, it comes as a surprise. We haven't talked about it ever. And all of a sudden on my performance evaluation, you're telling me I'm not, but you've never given me an opportunity to correct it or to do better. I've never heard anything about it till all of a sudden. When I talk to supervisors and managers about performance evaluations, I say your performance evaluation should be a book report, a summary of everything you've already talked about. Nothing should be new on a performance evaluation. It should just be the Cliff's notes of all of the things that you've talked about over that period of time, whatever it is, whether it be 3 months, 6 months, a year, 2 years, whatever it is. It's a summary of all of the discussions and feedback that you've given over that period of time,
The end of
not an
your report,
opportunity. Yep.
the end of your report should be a summary of what you guys talked about throughout the year, whether you met
Yep.
those, whether you didn't. If there's a cliffhanger or if there's a left turn at the very end, that's not a good performance management process. People should be aware. I always talk about when I tell people, I said, staff should be able to own their own performance management
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that when they walk into a performance management meeting, they already understand what the expectations are and where they are in meeting those.
Right.
So that
Right.
and that you're on the same page with them, right? So
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of conversation like this rather than
Right.
right.
Yeah.
And so
Yes.
it shouldn't, you know, those. those conversations are for the year, right? They're not for the end of the year, right? If I'm expecting, especially if I'm in a private sector and I'm expecting some type of bonus and that's how I'm going to pay for Christmas, and you tell me that I didn't meet that bonus. Why? Well, because in March you missed this. Why didn't you tell me in March so that I could have
Right.
improved it so that this could happen? Well, that's not how we do things, right? And so, that's a pop quiz. No one likes pop quizzes. And
Yeah.
and and it, and it keeps people from being engaged and figuring out what it is, how can they manage to be exceptional if they want to be. If I want to be an exceptional employee and be recognized as such, what markers do I need to hit? And you, the keeper of all data and stats, um, how am I doing, boss, in reaching those stats? Right. And so, that's definitely an important piece. I want to be able to have some type of control, some type of regulation of whether or not I want to be a 3, a 4, a 5, or a 1.5. Right. But it's arbitrary, like you mentioned. You have one supervisor who thinks you are, a superstar, and the next person who thinks you are a basic, what, right? So why? For many different reasons. We've talked about that with leadership. How many different people have different ideas of what exceptional is, ambitious, right? Performing, doing things the right way, right? Like we talked about in
Yeah.
the last class. Dr. Randy Posh says it's more important to do the right things and rather than to do things right, right? So, thinking if you're rating people on doing things right, are we measuring them on them doing the right things and focusing on that? And just think about, we measure performance, we can see stats. How do we measure their behavior? Right. Well, I mean, what are some behavior measurements? There's mission, vision statements everywhere, isn't there? Hopefully, you have an idea of your core values, your corporate values, your organization values, right? I have some. You want to play a game, Tiff? Let's play a game.
Let's play a game. I love a game. I love games. I'm gonna win because
Shall
I'm
we
competitive.
play?
There'll be the
All right.
last game you ever play with me, Carl. Let's play a game.
Okay, so if you fail, that helmet that you're wearing is going to pop off and it's going to look like Saw at the end of it. It's going to go, right? So, not that you're
Okay.
wearing a helmet, but just a
Did you just say I had a big head?
no,
I'm just joking.
no, no. That's why I said it's a
You don't want none of
proverbial
this.
helmet. It's a proverbial helmet, right?
Okay, gotcha. All right, ready
So
to play.
I have in front of me a set of core values from a state agency.
Okay.
And so these are things that are publicized and that are put out there for staff to follow and for customers to understand,
Okay,
right? And
gotcha.
so how can we be rated on these? So I'll start with the first one, accountability. How could
hmm
you rate somebody on accountability? What's a specific way that they can be rated?
So the first I would say would be to um maintain the commitments that they have agreed to.
Okay.
And I also would say are open to giving and receiving feedback. Those would
Okay.
be the two I would think of accountability.
Okay. And and it's just going off of what you said, maybe the feedback that they've received, if it's constructive, they've acted on it,
Right,
right?
right.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
constructive feedback could be from their customers, from their coworkers, from their supervisors, from their leadership, from the community. They're
Right.
open to receiving and acting on feedback.
Okay. Cool. And maybe showing up on time, right? That's being accountable, right?
Well, again,
So right.
keeping the agreements
Yeah.
that you made. So being accountable to the agreements that you've made. Yes.
Okay. Cool. Next one, integrity.
Integrity. So for me, measuring integrity would be um, acting in good faith in maintaining um, the quality of work as assigned. So following policies and procedures, clarifying expectations, and acting in the best interest of the county or the organization's mission. So integrity means sometimes even doing the right thing even if it gets you the wrong attention, and maybe standing up for the needs of the community and advocating for changes in policy and procedure when they are counterproductive to the mission.
Okay. I would also say for me, integrity would also be if you say you're going to do something, you get it done. If you
Yeah.
say you're going to follow up, you're going to send that email to that person, that email gets sent, right?
Yeah.
And if people have to constantly remind you to follow up with things, well, then maybe you're not a 5, maybe you're a 3, right?
Right.
Whatever else it is. You know.
I
Okay,
will
next one.
also hold on. I'm
Mhm.
going to add one more to integrity. Integrity, I think, will also include your behaviors and acting in the best interest of everybody, not just yourself. So, again, understanding and having some self-awareness about your presence and having the integrity to simmer down when you need to simmer down and stepping up even if it's not comfortable for you, but like having the integrity of how you show up in any given circumstance around behavior, not just the work.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
Next one, compassion.
Ooh.
Okay.
Compassion. How can we measure compassion? I'm going to say being curious over judgmental, being caring about the impact to other people, and having a genuine understanding or a desire to understand where somebody else is coming from, even if you don't agree.
What's a specific example that someone could be rated on for compassion?
So, for compassion, so I would say a phone call from an angry customer who gets on the phone and right away says, "You people don't know what you're doing. You're just a bunch of lazy government workers. I talked to 4 other idiots before I got to your dumbass, and I doubt you can help me because you are a moron." And compassion would be not taking that personal and saying, "Oh man, it sounds like you've really had a rough time with us. I can see you're super frustrated. Well, let's figure this out and see what we can do. What's going on?"
Okay.
That would be to me, that would be compassion. I'm not going to take it personal. I'm just going to recognize this person's having a hard time, and I'm not going to react to what they say to me. I'm going to react to I'm curious about what they've been through,
Hmm.
and I want to help.
Take that trauma informed approach rather than what's wrong
Right.
with them, what happened to them, right? I would
Right.
also maybe add, if somebody is, challenged with something, maybe taking it to your boss, hey, look, if we put them in this program, I feel like they're going to fail. What else can we do? Is there any other options we can do? And just
Mhm.
to be able to have that type of consideration for other folks and for that to be something that's visible, right?
Right.
Which is important. Okay, next one,
Mhm.
diversity.
Ooh.
We both did it at the
Diversity.
same time.
Ooh. Yeah. So
Mhm.
diversity for me, again, comes back to a little bit of the same as compassion, is being open-minded and curious instead of judgmental around all things. Obviously, when people think of diversity, I think the first thing that comes to mind are things like race and gender and ethnicity, the things that are very visible on the outside. And absolutely, that's part of it. But diversity also includes like the different ways people approach work, the different way that they communicate, the different ways that they process information, the different ways that they demonstrate their emotional intelligence, the different preferences for how to communicate, whether it be over the phone or an email. Like all of that is diversity. So I would say being open and flexible to ways that are not your own,
Mhm.
and being welcoming to allowing other people to be genuine and have genuine belonging. That's diversity. You don't
Be
have to be like
curious.
me. Yeah, you don't have to be like me. I want you to be like you. Be exactly who you are, and we'll find a way for us to work well together
Mhm.
and be curious about what each other needs. Um, so that we can come to our whatever our collective outcome is that we're looking for. But you don't have to agree with me, you don't have to think like me, and I don't have to think like you and agree with you. We can still have that. We can both be our genuine selves. And we invite other people who are don't think, we don't go for the confirmation bias. We invite perspectives and experiences that are not ours as equal and true, just the same as the ones we've experienced are equal and true. That's diversity for me.
Okay, cool. And I know that's true because one of the first classes that Tiff and I actually taught together was a class on bias and diversity, wasn't it? So, yeah.
Yep.
All right. Next one. You already kind of talked about it a little bit, but customer service.
So the way that I would measure customer service is does the customer get what they need when they need it? And again, in the given the circumstances, because it's not always that cut and dry. And did we treat them with all of the things, accountability, integrity, compassion, and diversity in meeting those needs? But customer service for me is not just about the external customer, it's also about customer service is how we serve each other in the workplace. How do we respond to conflict? How do we communicate with each other? How do we treat each other like they were our customer in the workplace? That's another part. Like how willing am I to be helpful to other departments or to another program? How willing am I to step in and offer my expertise when asked versus, oh, I'm too busy for that. So for me, it would be like to measure it. I might look at things like one contact resolution. I also might look at how many times did a customer have to come in and get their issue resolved before we resolved it? How are we communicative? How did we take ownership over the challenge and fix it within our scope of work? And how do we, again, create a service mentality, right? This is like not just in the individual interactions, but also speaking up when there are policies in place that prevent us from providing good service. How do we advocate for removing some of the barriers to providing services versus creating them? That to me is a service mentality. So advocating for ways to make it better for everybody, not just the external customers, but internal as well.
Okay. And then the last one, and you've already been here a couple
Am I
times.
winning, by the way? Am I winning the game so far?
I'd work for you.
Okay,
And so
awesome.
the last one is innovative. Takes
Ooh,
initiative.
takes initiative. I know, I love this one so much. So if I were measuring taking initiative, it would be how often, or do you have the capacity? That's not the right word. I'll come to the right word in a moment, but it's, are you willing to, maybe this is the right way to say it. Are you willing to try something new to improve the outcome? Or do you just keep doing the same thing and then bitching that you don't get a better outcome? So are you willing to try something new and fail and learn from it? Or do you just stick to the tried and true because nobody told you to do it different? So I'll give you a quick example of this. In working in human services, one of the things that customers are required to do is if they're receiving public assistance is every 6 months, they have either renewal or they have a form that they fill in. It's a form. The name of it doesn't matter, but it's like a status report. So they have to report if there's been any changes in their household or their income or their property or this, that, and the other. And so in order for them, the customer, to continuously receive their benefits, if they do not turn that form in, they won't get their benefits. And they get notifications. They get usually a letter mailed out on a certain date and they get a phone call on a certain date. But if that form is not completed by the due date, then their benefits will not be on their EBT card and they don't have food or money or whatever they're receiving. So as a worker, I know that if those reports don't get done and those clients don't get their benefits come the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth through the 10th of the month, I'm getting inundated with phone calls and visits about where's my benefits? How come I don't have money on my card? And oftentimes it's very preventable. You didn't turn in your report. Let's get it done and we can get your benefits on. And it's a lot of stress and headache because then you got to, it's just a hot mess to process these late reports. So, what I started doing as a worker, because I don't like to work harder than I have to, I started calling because I have a whole list of whose reports are due. I get a whole list every month of here's the people whose reports are due, make sure they get done on time. So as I'm like processing, and I see I have 10 people that haven't turned their reports in, I'm picking up the phone every day and being a bugaboo. So I'm like, Carl the Nester, I just wanted to give you a call. I know we sent you that report at the beginning of the month. I haven't received it yet. You do know if we don't get that report, you won't get your benefits on time next month. So how can I help you get this thing done? We can even do it over the phone. I can ask the questions over the phone now. We're so fancy. We can do this over the phone. What can I do to help you? Or Carl, again, it's Tuesday. I haven't received your report yet. Like, what would be a good time? Do you want to come in and I can help you fill it out? Or, hey, Carl, I know we talked on Tuesday. You said you would bring it in at the end of the day. It's Friday. I still haven't received it. I just want to remind you, if you don't get it done, you're not going to get your benefits. Now, where in policy does it say I have to make 3, 4, 16 phone calls? Nowhere. But I also know I don't want to deal with the drama at the beginning of the month. I don't want you to have a hardship as my client. I know I don't want to deal with your angry phone call. And I definitely know I don't want to do the extra work of processing a late report because it takes twice as long as if it was on time. So I'm going to take initiative to do what I think is in the best interest of getting my job done, even if nobody told me. Now, what's really interesting about this is because I do teach a time management and caseload management class. And that's one of the things is like be proactive and not reactive. So how do you, if you know that these people are going to be calling you, the people who turn in their reports late, if you know you're going to have to de-escalate, do all of this extra work, what can you do to prevent that? Call them, ask them, reach out, like whatever you can do to get them to turn it in on time. And I get feedback like, that's not my responsibility. Um, my policy doesn't say to do that. If I did that, my supervisor would be pissed off at me for making those extra phone calls. And so that's where it's like taking initiative. Take, like, how do you innovate if the process of just sending this letter and sending this notice is not getting it done? Then what can you do differently to get it done? And can I tell you, I had very few people coming in at the beginning of the month telling me they didn't have their benefits because I bugabooed everybody into getting their report done on time. And so my coworkers would say, must be nice, Tiffany, to not have a bunch of walk-ins. Must be nice for your phone not to be ringing off the hook. And I would say, oh my God, it is so nice. You guys should try it. It's awesome. It's great here. I love it. Right? Because I'm not struggling in the same way that you are because I want to be innovative and find a better way to do this. Because the work's got to get done either way. And so I have a fun saying I always say, if you ever want to know the best way to do something, ask a lazy person. I'm the lazy person. I don't want to work any harder than I have to. So if I can be innovative and cut the cord of what we've always done and find a better way, more efficient, faster, more effective way to do it without sacrificing quality, without breaking rules, then I'm going to find a better way to do it because I only have so much time in the day. I've got a lot of work to do. I'm going to try new ways. And sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. And when they don't work, I move on. I find a different way. But this is where I say taking initiative is you don't need my permission. Sometimes you might need my forgiveness. But if you can find a better way than the way it's done now, without, again, sacrificing quality, with maintaining the integrity of our programs, keeping with the accountability of what you said to do, being compassionate in the way we provide services. Like if you can incorporate all of that into innovation, then I'm all for it. I'm all for it. And in diversity, I purposely seek out people who think differently than me to challenge my status quo. I have this way, Carl, what do you do? Or how would you approach this? Because you're going to think of things that would never have been in my perspective. And I want to know about that because we can take what you know, what I know, what they know, and what he knows and what she knows and what they know and put it all together. Sky's the limit.
Yeah, but you've only been here 5 years. I've been here 25 years, Tiffany. Let me tell you, It's always been the same. So I'm just going to go ahead and, you know, continue to do. I mean, it's a thankless job. And these people, do they really appreciate our help? Right.
Hmm.
And all that other stuff. Right. And,
Yeah.
you
And
know,
how's that working out for you? You've been doing it the same way for 25 years. How's that working out for you?
oh, I can't wait to retire in 5 years.
Awesome. So in the next 5 years that you're here, what can you do to make your job easier?
Just stay out of the limelight and try to just keep my head down and, just manage my caseload the way that, just the bare minimum, because that's what they need from me and that's what they expect.
Okay, great. So guess what? I'm not going to give you tons of my attention, Carl. If that was your mentality, if you were my employee and that was your um response, I can't punish you for doing the bare minimum. Because if you're meeting those expectations, again, if you're doing less than the minimum, if you're doing less than the minimum, then I've got performance management I can do with you. But if I say you need to do 10 reports by Friday and you do 10 reports by Friday and you can do 20, but you just did the 10, guess what? You did what I'm paying you to do. I can't ask
Yeah.
you for more. So I'm not going to give you any of my energy. Do the bare minimum, Carl. I look forward to your 5 years. As long as you're meeting the expectations and you're not getting in the way of other people and you're doing quality work with integrity, I'm not going to let you opt out of a new policy, right? If I say the new policy is that if you have someone who didn't turn their report in, that you need to give them at least 3 phone calls and leave a message through more than 3 rings, like at least until it goes to voicemail, and you're not doing that, then I'm going to hold you accountable for that through feedback. And if you say, well, we've never done that before, I'd say, you're right. And we're going to try it and see how it works. I'd love to hear your feedback on how it's working out for you.
And on the flip side,
Yeah.
if that's the person who's, you know, perfectly happy doing the bare minimum to get that, even a three,
Yeah.
what can we do to those folks what can we do to those folks? What can we do for those folks that are deciding that they want to do more and that they're in the right place to make a difference? I was at a state hospital last month and somebody asked me, a supervisor, unit supervisor, asked me, but Carl, what do we do for those people who, are just doing the bare minimum, either because they don't want to do anything more or they're just, he called them stupid. And I said, well, do they know that you call them stupid in public? He
Right.
said, oh, no, I don't call them stupid in public. I said, okay, all right. Just, it's just lack of a better word. I said, okay, so first of all, if you think that they're stupid, then you're going to treat them like they're stupid,
Right.
And I said, they're not stupid because they got the job. But then again, also, when we're hiring, what are we looking for? Right? If you are looking to hire because you have to have a body to fill a position, that's exactly what you're going to get, a body, right? And so, you can improve performance management right from day one, from the interview process, asking the right questions, identifying. I mean, we know that they can do the bare minimum of the job based off of the application. The application shows they have the experience, they have the degree, they have, whatever those bare job requirements are. And we can take those knowledge, skills, and abilities and factor them into a interview question, right? Problem solver. Tell
Mhm.
me about a time where you've had to face a challenge that you never faced before. How did you work through it? Customer service, right? Tell me about a time where you had an angry customer and how did you resolve the situation? Right? If they say I went to my boss to help me solve the problem and they gave me the answer and I did it, or customer was angry, I went to my boss and they talked to the client and with the customer and we did it. What is that showing me? Right? As opposed to, well, I try to talk to them and help them. These are things that you can see. Like you just described all of those things. I would add those in a job interview, right? I want to know who you are, not what you can do. What you can do is in the assessment. I mean, is in the application, right?
Mhm.
But I also told him, I said, look, if we have 50% of our people that can go either way, if you recognize those folks who are putting forth that effort and they feel it and other people feel it, how many of those 50% will decide, I want to be like those people who are being recognized,
Right.
right? And it may be 20%, maybe 25% of that 50%. It may be half of them. It may be 70%. You can't control that. What you can do is recognize those people who want to go above and beyond and let them know that I see you. You are being seen, whether you are working the same shift or they are working an opposite shift from you. And, and I asked, people in another class, I said, so how many people, if you have folks working a 24-hour shift, how often do the people working opposite your shift see you? Oh,
Mhm.
probably not that much. Okay, well, and how are they feeling like you're seeing them? Right. And so it's a conversation. What is leadership? What does leadership mean to you? If it means a pay increase, then that's how you're going to treat it. If it means I'm leading a team of people to be the best team possible, then you do the things that are necessary to help them feel like they are part of a team, which means if I'm your leader, you need to see me. We need to be involved. We need to have conversations. Let me ask you how your weekend is, right? Those little things about you that maybe you wouldn't think somebody would know unless they work with you a lot. How was your daughter's birthday party, right? Or how was your crew? Did you take any pictures, right? Things like that. You know, those things really mean something to people. And if you spend time cultivating those relationships, those people that you want to perform better, they might feel like this person gives a damn. So I'm going to be loyal and run through a wall for them. That's called discretionary effort. And the other folks who see those people being recognized, either they can do one of two things. One, well, look at those people, that's their favorite. So, if they have that negative attitude, that's who they are. Right. But also, those people are being recognized for doing work. They are doing a little bit more than me. How can I be recognized in that way? It's a choice. There are some people in life who want to be the CEO. There's some people in life who are perfectly happy being the janitor. And, I don't care either way. Cool. That's where you want to be. Be the best that you can be. There's other people that are in between, right? Where do you want to end up? And
Mhm.
how can I, as your leader, facilitate that for you to make that happen? If you put forth the effort, I will put forth the effort, which is why managers get paid more, right? Which is why they have more power and influence
Mhm.
because the jobs take a lot of not just physical effort, but personal effort. And like you said,
Yeah.
people can be really good at the physical piece. And if they need to be better on the personal piece, that they don't have that um, coach who can help them through it, or they respect that coach, that can be very difficult. But if they do, right, how much more effective can they be? Right.
Right.
And so I told him, I said, that 50% of folks, they can go either way. You know, I would not focus on them not doing things. How can I get them to do things? When I came to the bank that I worked for, Jeff, there was a couple mandates. First thing was they wanted a um, interviewing and selection class for their managers. They wanted a
Mhm.
communication skills class for their managers to communicate with their staff. And third, they wanted a non-monetary recognition program. These are financial services workers who work at a bank that have end of year bonuses and end of year pay increases. And they specifically asked for a non-monetary recognition program in the middle of I'm not the pandemic, in the middle of the recession,
Mhm.
right? So what does that tell you? Folks who are supposed to be money driven also want to know that personally you think that they are doing well and that's important, right? So, you know, how do we cultivate that feeling within our staff that I want to give you all my effort, you got to give them the effort too. Just because you're sitting up here doesn't mean that you can just look down below and just wait for everyone else to get there. Just think of yourself as being on a bar stool. Right? You ever sat on just a bar stool? You're at Chili's,
Never.
come on, right? Yeah.
I've never sat in a bar stool in my whole life.
How comfortable is a bar stool? What
I
happens
don't know.
if you,
After a few drinks, very. I'm
but
just
I
joking.
mean, what if I mean, if you're sitting in a chair, you can lean back here. Can you do that in a
Yeah.
bar stool?
No.
Right? You have to have some type of posture, some type of, you know, um, stature, right? That you hold yourself in. Think of management as sitting on a bar stool. There is a position that helps you to stay supported, to stay strong. And if you slack off, it's easily for other people to see you not being a strong leader, right? And so it is so important to recognize, who am I to other people? Do they see me acting the way that I want them to portray me? If they don't, and they're not performing, is the problem with them, or is there some responsibility that I have? Right. And
All
so
right.
that's an important thing to
Mhm.
do. In performance management, people, I don't know, do you ever get those responses from people? Hey, I'd like you to be able to comment for me as a peer, and how often do those people respond? Right. I try to. I try to all
I
the time
do.
because they ask me. It's my responsibility to provide them the ability to be seen. Right. But a lot of people don't want to deal with it. So they just, you're three, you're three, you're three. Right. And
Yeah.
how annoying is that? So treat people the way you want them, how you expect them to be treated, and let them live up to that expectation. The folks who want to will come along.
Yeah.
Right. People that
I
are
love.
engaged, they don't want to be at the end of the parade because you know what happens at the end of the parade? What are you cleaning up?
Yeah.
All the horse poop. Right. So,
That's right. So I like the phrase work with the willing. And this is where I think the idea of focusing on high performers and again, how do you continuously develop the people who are interested? Again, I'm not going to spend a lot of energy on people who want to do the bare minimum as long as they're doing what they're paid to do. So if you are content, I think about like you have your oak trees and you have your acorns. Sometimes your acorns just want to be acorns. And if that's what you want to be and you want to be an acorn, then stay an acorn as long as you're meeting your expectations. And for those who want to grow into the big oak tree, I'm going to help support you and develop you through that development of from being from an acorn to a big old oak tree because that's what you want to do. But there's got to be continuous feedback along the way. I know I heard like 30 minutes once a week or once a month at minimum, but I think feedback needs to be like formally at least once a month, but informal feedback should be almost every single day because we're observing and we're seeing people working every single day. And if I'm a leader, if I'm a supervisor, manager, and I see you, Carl, let's say stealing a ream of paper from the printer every day, like I'm going to need to address that. Obviously, if I'm seeing you do something outside of what you're supposed to do, I've got to address that immediately. But we also see people doing great stuff every day. And how often do we not share the great stuff that people are doing, except for some like blanket statement like, oh, you're doing a great job, keep up, you're a rock star, don't get me started on that, right? You're a rock star versus giving the same type of attention to positive reinforcement as we do constructive criticism or constructive feedback, but feedback is an ongoing thing. I like to compare feedback to bowling. You ready for me to do performance evaluation in a bowling analogy? Are you ready for this, Carl? Are you ready?
bring it.
You all know bowling, right? Do you bowl at all? Do you ever go to the bowling alley?
I have my own ball.
Oh shoot. Okay. All right. So let me, for us peasants, us bowling peasants. So if I think about bowling, which again, I haven't really bowled much since the pandemic. I just remember how reckless we were before the pandemic. And like touching the community balls, putting our hands in there, and then eating chicken wings and pizza. Just I don't know how we're still alive. But anyways, um, if you think about the game of bowling, you have 10 frames, right? 10 frames where you get two shots. I don't know all the lingo, but you get two chances to knock down all 10 pins. The expectation or the objective of the game of bowling is to knock down as many pins in as few rolls as you can. If you knock them all down on the first spin, or whatever you call it, the first roll, you get a strike, and strikes are very valuable. And of course, if you do like the digital bowling, there's always like a little cartoon, and everybody celebrates. You high five everybody on your way back. You got a strike. You get to celebrate. If you don't get all of the pins down the first one, you get a second try. And if you get them all down the second try, you get a spare. Not as valuable as a strike, but still pretty good. You still get to high five everybody. But you can also potentially throw a gutter ball. And if you throw a gutter ball, people can like, meh, meh. Or if you like bowl with supportive people, they might say, oh, here, let me show you how to do it. You know, you keep throwing gutter balls. Here's where you're going wrong. Let me help you. You can get some feedback right away. And so you get to watch on the screen your score and how your score is comparing to the other people that you're playing with. And you get to, again, celebrate whatever that looks like. At the end, you have your final score, and then you get to decide who won, right? I always change it at the end because I'm really bad at bowling. I always call it, we were playing golf bowling. So the lowest score wins. Therefore, I'm the winner because I changed the rules so I can win. But now imagine bowling, same concept, but instead of you getting to see how you roll every time, there's like a sheet at the front of the lane. And so you throw your bowling ball twice, but you have no idea if it knocked pins down, if you got a gutter ball, if you got a strike, you have no idea. And you have to bowl all 10 frames. And then at the very end, it gives you your score. Would you be excited to
No,
bowl? Would you
I'd
be
be anxious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you got a 300, a perfect score on bowling, you might be like, oh, wow, I got a perfect score. That's great. But I didn't get to do the turkey dance when I got that turkey, right? I didn't get to do the celebrations in between. So even though I won, which is cool, I still feel like I was anxious the whole game. So I didn't even get to enjoy my victory. Or, oh my gosh, I usually am a great bowler. I did a gutter ball. I knocked no pins down. I have a 0, and I didn't get any opportunity to change the way I was bowling along the way. I just kept throwing gutter balls thinking they were strikes. And now I'm pissed. So to me, this is the equivalent of performance evaluations without regular feedback. We've got to celebrate when people are getting it right. So if I'm walking through, I'm a supervisor and I'm walking through the workplace, and I happen to catch an ear hustle conversation where a coworker or one of my staff members is on the phone, and I can tell that the customer is being really aggressive with them and they stay professional. I have to address that to say, hey, Carl, I heard you on the phone earlier today, and I could see that your customer was really upset, but you were so compassionate and so professional. I just wanted to let you know that I saw that, and you're doing a great job. Keep that up. In the same energy that if I walked by and you told the customer, you know what? If you don't like our rules, maybe you should get a job and you wouldn't have to deal with us. I'd have to address that because I can't allow you to continue with that behavior. I have to treat what you do well with the same energy as I would treat if you made a mistake. And you notice people doing good stuff all the time. How often do you share it? It doesn't have to be formal. I don't have to be like, Carl, do you have a minute? Can I talk to you real quick in my office? You did great on that phone call. I don't have to make it that dramatic. It could just be in passing. I heard you on the call. You did great. I love the compassion. I love the way you responded. You really are embodying our value of compassion. And I just wanted to recognize you for that. I don't have to pull the whole team together and say, Carl did good on his call. Carl was compassionate. He gets a compassionate award. Everybody recognize Carl, because if Carl doesn't like public feedback, he may never be compassionate again because he doesn't want to be put in the spotlight. That might not be his jam. I might like that. Like if I do something right, I'd like a marching band, but that might be terrifying for somebody else. And so I want to be cautious about recognizing the people that in the way that they want to, and privately might be the right way. And if they're like, I want something bigger, can you tell the team I did a good job? Got you. At the next team meeting, I'd be happy to tell everybody you did a good job, but I'm not going to do that without your permission. So it's like that game of bowling. You have to continuously be giving people the feedback. Hey, you threw a gutter ball. What can we do to improve and help you score a strike? Or you know what? You got a spare. How do we get you to a strike? Do you want a strike? Like, let's have those conversations so that it's fun for people, and not fun like a game of bowling, but enjoyable. Like they have to work, You should be able to come to work and enjoy what you do and feel like you're doing it with a group of people who are respecting and validating you in the same energy that they would tell you if you got a gutter ball. So that's my bowling analogy with feedback. You can have it if you want.
Okay, I'm going to use it. But, but that's the thing. I mean, what if you have three gutter balls in a row, three frames of gutter balls, and then your your captain of your team says, "Hey, if you just move your feet a little bit over here and keep your eye on the pins, and you roll on the fourth frame, you get 7. Then fifth frame, you get 8, and you get a couple spares, and the last 2 balls are strikes." And maybe you scored under 100, but you started with 0 for
Mhm.
the first 4 frames, right? Which is almost half of your, right? I mean, so if you go from a 1 to a 3, or if you go from a performance improvement plan to a 2, right? But it's momentum that's building. I am progressing. I am getting better. I am performing in a positive way. That is not as evident when it's, we're hiding the result, and you're going to know at the end,
Right.
right?
Right.
So keeping status, people want to know where they stand. If I suck, how can I get better?
Right.
If I'm a rock star, how do I stay a rock star? Right? If I'm right where I should be, okay, so what do I need to do for the rest of the year to get to right where I should be? And every month, every other week, there's a check-in where I'm maintaining the status quo, right?
Yeah.
So we need to have that regular understanding, right? Otherwise, performance management does not mean anything except for anxiety, right? Like we said, at the end of the performance management meeting, at the end, it should be just the summary of the book, right? Should be the clip notes, should be the index in a book, table
Yeah.
of contents, right? Or you can see, oh yeah, customer Jones, oh, on page 30, okay, right? That
Yeah.
was an example of that. So yeah, absolutely. And what you talked about, we've already mentioned this in the podcast, but I mean, it bears repeating. The positive to negative ratio is a real thing,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And it's important to say, hey, thank you so much for working with that customer. And I saw what you did and how you de-escalated them, or I've seen how hard you're working with this person. And, I know they went into sanction, but geez, you really gave them a lot of rope, and you did your best to be able to help them, right? Cool. That's
Yep.
nice. And I want to be seen, right? But also, like we've also mentioned, how was your weekend? Did you watch the Olympics? You're gonna watch Beetlejuice tonight,
I am.
right?
As soon
Are you?
I'm going to watch it as soon as we're done here. I've already been looking at times. Yes. Yes, I am.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
right.
Well, I was going to say, I promised you math and I haven't given you the math yet. Are you ready for your math?
I
The
thought I was going to
equation?
talk my way out of the math.
You're
Okay.
not. But this is really helpful math. It's a word problem. It's an
Okay.
equation. It's like the
Yeah.
Pythagorean theorem, but better. Okay. Is that a real thing? The Pythagorean theorem? That sounds like something I should
A
remember.
squared plus B squared equals C squared.
C
Yes.
squared. Okay, perfect.
That's as far
So
as I
there
went in algebra. Yeah. Go ahead.
so fun fact, I have a degree in accounting. I can't do basic math, but figure that one out. But I do love
Got a
equations.
calculator. Got a 10 key. Right. Yes.
Exactly, exactly. So I have an equation for performance management, especially as a diagnostic tool, because again, going back to the plants earlier, what people need is going to be different. And so here is a way for leaders. If you have somebody who maybe is underperforming or you're trying to assess performance issues, here's the equation. It's ability plus motivation minus constraints equals performance. So again, ability plus motivation minus constraints. So for me as a leader, if I have someone who's underperforming, I can look at each of these. Again, I'm not going to just blame the employee and say, "Oh, they're just stupid," right? The word you used earlier. We're not going to go there because there's things that it's like a check engine light. It's not always going to be one thing. So I need to look, does this person have the ability to do the work? So meaning skills, knowledge, capabilities. Have they been trained? Did they understand the training? Do they need one-on-one development? Can I teach them or show them how to do the work? I need to know how to do that. The second part is the plus motivation. Do they want to do the work? Is it important to them? Do they find value in it? Is there some kind of intrinsic value of doing the work? Do they know it's assigned to them? Do they find it useful? Do they find value in the outcome, or is it busy work? There's a lot of things that go into motivation. We can spend a whole day talking about that. The last one is minus constraints. And this is where leaders have the most impact. What are the things that get in the way of people doing the work? Because let's say, for example, I know how to do the report. I'm motivated to do the report, but the system that we do the report in is down. I can have all of the ability and all of the motivation, but if the constraint is bigger than my ability and motivation, then I'm not going to get it done. If I'm saying I have the ability to maybe provide great customer service, but I'm not motivated to do it because my boss treats me like crap, the constraint for me might also be the culture of how we talk to each other and how we show internal customer service. And so that impacts both the constraint and my motivation, even though I know what I'm supposed to do. I have the ability. I'm just choosing not to. It could be I'm highly motivated and there are no constraints except for I don't know how to do it. I've never done it before and I need you to show me, and show me like I'm a second grader, right? Draw me a picture with crayons, preferably, because that's the way that I learn. Then that's the part that I can focus on. So as leaders, when we're looking at performance, if you have people who are meeting or just meeting or are not underperforming, don't just go straight to the employee as the problem. Maybe the constraint is there's not clarity in the expectations. Maybe the expectations are not in line with the mission, vision, and values. Maybe I've been getting different feedback from different people and I'm not really sure how to proceed. Maybe I don't have the right resources to do the job. There's lots to it. It's complex. It's nothing we can solve in the next 3 minutes. But what I'm saying is that there's diagnostic tools. And so always be thinking about, if you're managing your own performance, if I don't have the ability, where can I get the skill? Right? We're talking about people getting promoted that don't necessarily have leadership skills. I'm really good at doing the work, but I don't know how to talk to people. Where can you learn about that ability? What trainings can you attend? What podcasts? This one's a good one that you can listen to. What books can I read? What videos can I watch that will help me develop that skill? Who can mentor me? If I'm not motivated to do it, then I have to check in with myself and say, well, why is this important? And what do I need to do to get motivated? Or who do I need to talk to? Or how can I think about this differently if I'm getting feedback it needs to get done? And if there's constraints, again, how do I advocate for what I need? How do I bring up and get feedback about some of those constraints? Maybe they get worked on and maybe they don't, but a closed mouth doesn't get fed. So I've got to advocate for what I need to remove some of those constraints so I can be effective in my performance. All of this requires a lot of like self-reflection and engagement. And from leaders, they also have to be willing to look at themselves and say, maybe I'm overwatering. Maybe I'm underwatering. Maybe I'm treating everybody exactly the same and they need something different. And that's the constraint that's getting in the way of performance, is I'm not looking at people as diverse, but as a cookie cutter response to every situation. And that's something I can grow and develop. So I don't know. That's my math. That's my calculus. That's all I have. It wasn't so bad, Carl. You didn't have to carry the one or anything. What do you think about my math?
I like it. Yeah, and I actually, the I talk about ability and motivation. I like the constraint piece of it as well. And so it's a conversation to have, right, with people who maybe don't have the ability. What do you do to train them up, right? They don't have the motivation. How do you help them to get buy-in, right? And some people would say it's harder to work with staff who have low ability. Other people would say it's harder to work with staff who have low motivation, right? And so, but the constraints are definitely something that's important, something Anderson and Budson didn't come up with back then. And to think about what are the things that are keeping me from maybe being motivated? What are the things that are keeping me from being properly trained, right? You know, you had the training, 2-day training when you knew I was going to be on vacation those 2 days 6 months ago, and you're not offering another offering of it. You're not, you're just going to show me a recording. Well, yeah, I learned better kinesthetically. You're not, so sometimes that's a challenge, isn't it? Right. And so just thinking about how we can put people in the best position to succeed. And is it a training issue? Is it a motivation issue? Is it something where we can remove those constraints, and recognizing that everyone's the same, like you mentioned, the idea of, situational leadership, which I'm sure we'll talk about somewhere down the line, and that conversation on motivation might be something we want to have pretty soon, right? But just making sure that those folks are seen. The more that they're seen, the more that they're heard, the more that they will have support that's tailored to their needs, right? If you come at management as this cookie cutter, one size fits all, you're going to have a lot of folks who are missing the mark, and you're going to blame it on them. And either they're going to leave or you're going to have a team of unproductive folks, which you may be happy with, but I know I want more, right?
Mhm.
So
All right. You ready for your questions, Carl? You ready for the questions?
go for it.
All right. My first question here is, how is your performance measured? So for leaders, I encourage you to go back to your performance evaluations and have conversations around those performance evaluations. How are we measuring this for our staff? How are we communicating those measurements to them so that they can know how to exceed, how to do above standard, how to be standard, how to, what are the measurements? So being very clear on those expectations around performance. The second question I have is the fun game that we played around values is how can you link your organizational values to behavior? So how do you be more specific on not just the buzzwords, like be more compassionate, but what behaviors support being compassionate? What does that look like for you? How is it being viewed? And very, very important here is how are you giving feedback about those behaviors and values? I noticed that you were compassionate. I noticed that you were being very diverse. I noted, like, how do you give that feedback when people are supporting those values or acting contradictory to them? My very last question is this: what are you willing to do to increase your performance? And I will say you individually, but I also as leaders, what are you willing to do to improve the performance of your team? Are you going to be looking at a potentially increasing ability, increasing motivation, or removing some of those constraints? What are you willing to do? Because we can see a problem, that doesn't mean that we'll step in and fix it. And so for me as an individual, how am I willing to step in and lean into fixing my own performance? But for leaders, what are you willing to do to help create the environment where people can succeed? Those are my questions. Boom.
Okay. We all got homework.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. So performance management, there it is. And just think about the benefits that we talked about and how you can, if you're having communication, motivation, morale issues, being in more contact, having more conversations, right? Doing things that are specifically for your staff, how we can make that happen. Staff that
Mhm.
feels like you are specifically interested in them will be more interested in you. So,
Yep.
all right. And Tiff is interested in Beetlejuice. Beetlejuice. I'm not
I
saying it
am. I'm
again.
so excited. I have
I
not been
love it.
to a movie theater since Straight Outta Compton came out. If that gives you any clue of how long it's been. And the reason I don't go to movie theaters is I hate kids and I get pissed off when I go to a movie and the kids are so control your kids, number one, control your children. But I really want to see Beetlejuice in the movie theater. So I'm gonna go see it just for nostalgia's sake. And I'm gonna be very compassionate towards the people with their children in the movie theater today. I'm going to practice that. I'm not going to yell at them and I'm not going to throw popcorn at them. Not that I've ever done either of those things.
See, I'm being judgmental here, but folks, don't take your kids to see Beetlejuice in the theater. Let 'em-
Go,
let 'em
go,
s-
go after
let 'em
today. Let me go see it and then do what you want. Let me go see it without your.
Yeah, especially this Beetlejuice. I mean, so let us adults have some nostalgia.
Yeah.
Give us a platform to just love it the way we loved it when we were kids. Anyways,
And I
it's
love
not,
I love Winona Ryder. I love
yeah,
Winona Ryder. You can never make me hate her. I don't care if she can shoplift, I'll forgive it. I'll go pay her bill if I have to. I love Winona Ryder. She is like one of my favorite actresses from my childhood. And so anything that she does, I'm there. Thank you, Winona, for the memories. Heathers. I love that
well,
movie.
I was
So,
glad to
anyways,
see other people too, so that are gonna be in the movie. Anyways, so yes, everyone, go forth and treat your staff well, and
yes.
we will see you in our next episode. And until then, I'm Carl,
Tiff.
and let's keep it real.